It's Tuesday, September 29th, 2009, and it's got to be 4:20 somewhere in the world. I'm your host, Radical Russ Belville. Produced and distributed by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C., this is your NORML Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. Welcome to the most popular podcast regarding marijuana in all of America and all the world, featuring interviews with scientists, politicians, doctors, prohibition policy activists, regular cannabis consumers, musicians, and NORML staff and NORML's board of directors, along with music and comedy no other podcast can offer. You can always find out more about our show at our website, stash.norml.org, and continue the education and conversation on our blog as well. We're ending marijuana prohibition with education, one listener at a time. The podcasting and blogging technology for the NORML Daily Audio Stash is provided by Red Aphid Interactive Media. For your professional web design needs, visit redaphid.com. Good day, Stashers, and welcome to the podcast. And yes, it is a brand new podcast. Been off the air for a while as I've been traveling all over this great country, and I've got to say I've had more fun and worked harder than I probably have in my whole lifetime. Of course, I flew off to Boston for the Freedom Rally for a couple of days, and then I spent 2 days in Washington, D.C., staying at the guest bedroom of NORML founder Keith Stroup. Boy, I can't tell you all the stuff we stayed up late night talking about, but I'll never forget it. It's one of the highlights of my lifetime, I must say. I also got to meet my engineer, Stevie Lee Webb, from my former Radical Russ show that I had on XM Satellite. We'd never met face-to-face. He worked in D.C. in the studio while I did the show from Portland, so that was kind of cool. And, of course, I flew to San Francisco for the National NORML Conference 2009 at the Grand Hyatt. If you missed me, you can listen to the live audio feed that we've got at live.norml.org. We did 3 hours live on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and is available for download or subscription as a podcast on iTunes. So just look for NORML Show Live and you'll find all that great audio. The parties after the conferences were also incredible. Thursday night, there was a nice mixer that we all got together. Friday night was a private party at Richard Wolf's house, aka the Starship Enterprise. And Saturday night was the NORML fundraiser party outdoors at a place called Terra. Well, it was indoors and outdoors. They had a band inside and food, and there's a big outdoor patio with mixing, mingling, and one of the finest bars you could ever walk up to. I won't tell you what kind of bar, but, email me privately and I'll let you know. A good time was had by all, and many, many contacts and conversations were made that are going to help end this stupid adult marijuana prohibition. Now, coming up on the next few days, we will have a podcast today on Tuesday, and then for Wednesday, September 30th, we will also have a podcast. Thursday, October 1st, I'll be flying to Madison, Wisconsin for the Great Midwest Harvest Fest, so no podcast while I'm up in the air. Friday, I will be in Green Bay, Wisconsin, taking my first ever tour of Lambeau Field, so I'm taking a personal holiday out of that one. Saturday, I will be broadcasting live from the Great Midwest Harvest Fest, so you can tune in at live.norml.org. Then on the following Monday, we'll get a podcast up summarizing what happened in Madison. A week from today, I'm flying to Orlando for a speech at the University of Central Florida, so no podcast next Tuesday. Wednesday, I'll be giving that speech at the University of Central Florida. I'll provide the live audio from that, if I can, through NORML Show Live. And then Thursday, I'll be flying back to Portland. So again, the podcast schedule will be a little sporadic as we get through these next couple of trips. For those of you who are missing out on your daily audio stash, I apologize when I'm gone on these long trips, but part of being outreach coordinator is to actually go out to these cities and reach out to all the budding marijuana activists out there. But if you don't like the subscription, you can always get a refund of the purchase price.
It only comes twice a day, but I don't care. It's 420 somewhere.
It's time to check our normal calendar of events, which you can find at norml.org/calendar. Thursday, October 1st, the Great Midwest Harvest Festival begins in Madison, Wisconsin, and this will go all the way through Sunday the 4th. For more information, check out madisonhempfest.com. Also on Thursday, October 1st, Philly NORML has their open meeting, 7:30 to 9:30 at 4722 Baltimore Avenue in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. This is a place called the A Space, and for more information, check out phillynormal.org. On Friday, October 2nd, North Ohio NORML begins their Harvest Fest, which takes place on Friday, Saturday, Sunday at the Chippewas Valley Campground, 8809 Lake Road in Seville, Ohio. For more information, check out northohio.normal.net. And also the Kansas City Oktoberfest takes place on Friday, October 2nd, 3700 Broadway Street, number 210 in Kansas City, Missouri. That's the Uptown Theater. They'll have 16 bands and 10 artists, so check it out at kcnormal.org. Also on that Friday, October 2nd, Cannabis Common Sense TV show is available at ustream.tv. On Saturday, October 3rd, Kansas City's Lakeside Mini-Fest takes place at 4200 East 119th Street in Kansas City, Missouri. More information at kcnormal.org. And on Sunday, October 4th, NORML Nebraska will be having an open meeting in Omaha at the Coffee House Panache at 1324 P Street, Omaha, Nebraska. For more information, check out normalnebraska.org. It's a NORML shout-out. Our shout-outs today go out to 2 areas in California where we are attempting to expand the reach of NORML in the Golden State. I met with Cheryl Schumann from Shaman Therapeutics, and she will be starting up the Beverly Hills NORML chapter, or as I like to call it, 9021 NORML. If you want information on how to contact Cheryl and get involved with Beverly Hills NORML, send me an email at stash@normal.org. Her partner Fred will be instrumental in starting up a NORML chapter in South Lake Tahoe, California, right near the Nevada border. And again, for information on the South Tahoe area, send me an email at stash@normal.org. Now, coming up on today's Daily Audio Stash, we begin with your hemp headlines, including an update from the bedside of the Emperor of Hemp, Jack Herer, direct from the Facebook page of Paul Stanford, who's been visiting him here in Portland, Oregon. The California Supreme Court affirms the right of people to collectively cultivate medical marijuana, and Marie Claire magazine breaks out with an article called Stiletto Stoners, chronicling young professional women who prefer marijuana to martinis. For our daily Toker Tunes brought to you by MarijuanaMusicAwards.com, I'm going to be bringing you some music over the next few stashes from bands that I've been meeting on the road at these various hemp fests and rallies. Today's selection brings you some hard-hitting rock from Graveyard Barbecue of Boston, Massachusetts. And in our look at the NORML Legal Committee, we feature Bill Panzer, Esquire, one of the co-authors of Proposition 215, leading the question and answer session at the NORML National Conference on individual patients and small collectives. How are they legal under Prop 215 and the Attorney General's guidelines, or are they legal at all? The panel includes Omar Figueroa, Esquire, from California, Xenia Silg from California, Chris Conrad, a court-recognized expert in medical marijuana cultivation, and Dr. Frank Lucido, a recognized medical marijuana doctor in the state of California. All that and more coming up on your NORML Daily Audio Stash.
Hello, I'm Paul Stanford from the Hemp and Cannabis Foundation, or THCF. Medical marijuana is legal in 13 states today, and THCF has clinics in 8 of those states. Our doctors help qualified patients obtain an authorization for medical marijuana in their state. Patients are eligible for medical marijuana with a history of either severe chronic pain and or nausea, cancer, AIDS or HIV, hepatitis, glaucoma, seizure disorders like epilepsy, chronic muscle spasms such as multiple sclerosis or asthma, neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's, and gastrointestinal disorders like IBS or Crohn's disease. If you or someone you know has one of these conditions, our doctors will help you obtain a permit for medical marijuana. THCF Medical Clinics has offices in Washington State, Oregon, California, Colorado, Hawaii, Nevada, Montana, and now Michigan. Call 1-800-723-0188 or go to the web at hemp.org or 1-800-723-0188.
Now it's time to take a look at the latest stories about marijuana from news organizations across America and around the world in our NORML daily audio stash, Hemp Headlines. Update from Jack Herer's bedside. From Paul Stanford. I just left Jack Herer's bedside at Portland's Emmanuel Hospital. While I was there, our mutual friend, Tim Pate, played his guitar and sang to him. Tim has been playing for Jack daily for the past week. On Tuesday, as Tim played, Jack's eyes opened for the first time, and there has been some progress since then. As I spoke to Jack, his eyes shifted and looked into mine. As Tim plays, Jack's gaze shifts from watching the guitar strings and watching Tim singing gently. Given the circumstances, Jack's recovery to this point is astounding. Last week, he was in a deep coma with little brain activity. I urge you to continue to pray and send positive energy and thoughts to Jack. EEG testing has shown some progress this week, but I am told there is permanent damage to his heart and brain. Jack is breathing with a respirator and remains in critical condition in the intensive care unit. Jack's wife, Jeannie Herer, has set up a fund at U.S. Bank, the Jack Herer Fund. She has incredible expenses traveling from California and staying here by Jack's side, and no money. Please make a donation in person or by mail at any U.S. bank to the Jack Herer Fund. More than ever, this makes me want to see successful efforts in 2010 to legalize marijuana in California and Oregon, as Jack has tried to do so many times in the past. When people talk about the political necessity of ending adult marijuana prohibition, sometimes some of the folks on our side are saying that we need to wait till 2012, when it'll be a presidential election and we'll get a younger demographic out to the polls. But cases like Jack's remind us that we don't have time to wait. There are people that have been fighting their entire life to end this prohibition. They can't afford to wait. There are people in prison because of this prohibition. They can't afford to wait. There are sick and dying people being kicked off of organ transplant lists. They can't afford to wait. There are sick and dying people in non-medical marijuana states facing arrest and prosecution for trying to get relief from a plant. They can't afford to wait. There are college students losing their scholarships. They can't afford to wait. There are people being kicked out of their homes. There are people losing their children, their jobs, their licenses. They can't afford to wait. One more day, one more month, one more year is too long to wait. Do something to end adult marijuana prohibition today, and please visit your U.S. bank and make a donation to the Jack Herer Fund. Put your money where your mouth is and support this icon of the marijuana movement and his family in these most trying times. California Supreme Court affirms collective right to cultivate. From San Francisco Weekly. In a major victory for pot advocates, the California Supreme Court, right around harvest time, has refused to review a landmark appellate court ruling protecting the right of medical marijuana patients and their caregivers to collectively grow weed. The 2-to-1 ruling by California's 3rd Appellate District Court also affirmed patients' ability to take civil action when their right to collectively cultivate marijuana is violated by law enforcement. The case, County of Butte versus Superior Court, involved a private 7-patient medical marijuana collective in Paradise, California. Oh, the delicious irony, props to God or whomever is responsible. The case, County of Butte versus Superior Court, involved a private 7-patient medical marijuana collective in Paradise, California. The court went further, stating that to deny medical marijuana patients protection from warrantless intrusions and seizures by law enforcement, quote, would surely shock the sensibilities of the voters who approved Proposition 215, end quote. The landmark decision said that the Compassionate Use Act of 1996 is not simply an affirmative defense to criminal sanctions, holding that it consisted of, quote, an opportunity for an individual to request the same constitutional guarantee of due process available to all individuals, no matter what their status, under the state constitution. The fact that this case involves medical marijuana and a qualified medical marijuana patient does not change these fundamental constitutional rights. or an individual's right to assert them." End quote. It's about time that we had somebody affirming that the Constitution doesn't become null and void simply because you're dealing with marijuana and marijuana users. The California Appellate Court got it right, and the Supreme Court was right to not hear this case because it is obvious that the voters of California did not mean Proposition 215 to be some sort of exception to the Bill of Rights or state constitutional guarantees. Remember all those days when law enforcement used to say, "We don't make the laws, we just enforce them"? Well, guess what, law enforcement? The court is telling you exactly what the laws are. It's about time you started to recognize them. Marie Claire magazine profiles stiletto stoners. Jennifer Pelham kicks off her black Marc Jacob pumps, slips out of her trim Theory blazer, and collapses on the couch. The 29-year-old corporate attorney for one of Manhattan's top law firms has just clocked another 12-hour day, and though it's over, she's having a hard time shaking off her frustrations. A partner had eviscerated the contract she drafted, then left before Pelham had a chance to explain herself. Still distracted, Pelham orders dinner, sushi as usual, then reaches for a plastic orange prescription bottle standing on the corner of her coffee table alongside a glass pipe and blue Bic lighter, just as the cleaning lady left them. She twists off the cap, pinches off a piece of the fragrant green bud inside, gingerly places it in the bowl of the pipe, and lights up. Over the next 30 minutes, she takes 3 deep drags, enough to drown out the noise whirring in her head. Then she eats. Quote, "I hate the term pothead. It connotes that I'm high 24/7, which I'm not," Pelham says, wincing. "I don't need it to get through my day. I just enjoy it when my day is over." End quote. Her nightly ritual costs only $50 a month, a pittance compared with the cost of her monthly gym membership or a Saturday night out with her fiancé, an investment banker who occasionally smokes with her. At 5'4", slim and athletic, she ran 3 miles a day while in law school. Pelham insists that pot is the ideal antidote to a hairy workday. It never induces a post-happy hour hangover, and unlike the Xanax a doctor once prescribed for her anxiety, never leaves her groggy or numb. Quote, "Look, every female attorney I know has some vice or another," end quote. Pelham shrugs, tucking her long brown hair behind her ears, her 3-carat cushion-cut engagement ring catching the light. Quote, "It's really not a big deal," end quote. People, as big as that Fortune magazine article was from last week, I think this article in Marie Claire magazine is going to be a huge game changer. I've always said that what we really need to end adult marijuana prohibition is to get women on board. And Marie Claire magazine is a lifestyles, hairstyles, celebrity gossip, very young, professional woman's type magazine. And they're painting marijuana smokers as typical, even atypical for their high levels of careers and achievement, something to aspire to for young ladies. I'm really impressed by this article in Marie Claire. I bought my first copy while out on the airport throughout my travels, and it's really a good read. Check out the link at stash.normal.org to read the whole thing.
There is a peaceful solution called a peace revolution. And now let's take back America.
This is Willie Nelson. Like millions of freedom-loving Americans, I'm a marijuana smoker, and I don't think that should be any of the government's business. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the responsible use of marijuana. The next time you light up, take the time to let your elected officials know how you feel. It's time we legalize marijuana and stop treating marijuana smokers like criminals. For more information on how you can help legalize marijuana, please contact NORML at norml.org.
The battle to end adult marijuana prohibition can sometimes seem endlessly frustrating and impossible to overcome. One way we bond as a community and draw strength to continue is by rejuvenating our spirit through art and music.
Everybody get down!
The Marijuana Music Awards exist to recognize those sonic artists in all genres of music who feature a ganja-friendly message to motivate and inspire all the cannabis community. Our daily Toker tunes, brought to you by MarijuanaMusicAwards.com, feature the finest in blues, rock, jazz, hip-hop, rap, reggae, country, bluegrass, and dance music to enhance that 420 feeling while promoting the message of reform. To donate your song for possible use on the stash, enter it in the next Marijuana Music Awards contest today. Tam's got the next couple of weeks off while I'm traveling around and the podcast production is sporadic. This gives me the chance to upload some killer music I've picked up while out on the road. Graveyard Barbecue is a band I heard on stage at the Boston Freedom Rally who really rocked my socks off. It's safe to say they would pass the Herb Age Rockin' test for sure. I don't know much more about them than that, but you can check out their website at graveyardbbq.com to learn more. You can also see some cell phone photos of their Boston performance through my TwitPic feed at twitpic.com/photos/radicalruss. Here it is, some hard rockin' with the Graveyard Barbecue reprise from Graveyard Barbecue. In the marijuana law reform movement, the cannabis community is represented by two separate yet equally important groups: the consumers who use and cultivate cannabis, and the defense attorneys who represent these consumers. These are their stories. It's time for Reforming Marijuana Laws with the NORML Legal Committee. With over 350 practicing attorneys, the NLC is a major force in the fight against marijuana prohibition. These top-notch criminal defense lawyers regularly defend individuals charged with marijuana offenses, and they frequently provide pro bono assistance in important or unusual cases which may set favorable legal precedent or otherwise impact public policy. To join the NORML Legal Committee as an attorney or to find a lawyer for your cannabis defense, visit the Find a Lawyer link at norml.org. Got some great audio here from the NORML Legal Committee. This is a panel on the individual small caregivers and collectives under Prop 215 in California. It's moderated by William Panzer, Esquire. He's the lawyer who's on the NORML Board of Directors, as well as one of the co-authors of the original Prop 215. You'll also hear from other members of the panel, including Chris Conrad, court-certified medical marijuana growing expert, Omar Figueroa, Esquire, another medical marijuana attorney in California, Xenia Gilg, Esquire, another medical marijuana expert, and Dr. Frank Lucido, a doctor who specializes in a medical marijuana practice. We open up now with the question and answers from the floor to the panel at NORML Conference 2009.
I will say that, a lot of people have public defenders, have lawyers that are not that familiar with this area of the law. I know that I spend a lot of time talking with other lawyers, with other public defenders. If anybody calls me to pick my brains, I've got time for them. I'll share my motions. I'm sure that Omar and Xenia, the same thing. There aren't many of us that really know this stuff, but we want to help the other lawyers so that they'll get it down too. Because the more of us that really understand this law, the more people that we can help.
All right. I have a quick question. Under the Minch decision, is there any solid clarification for the relationship of caregivers under the law at this point in time? Or is the only safe way for a collective to accept a caregiver would be to have the caregiver's state ID card present?
Somebody want to handle it?
Would the only solid defensible way for a collective to accept a caregiver would be for them to have a state ID card stating that they are the patient's caregiver in regards to the Minch decision? Did they give any solid relationship guidelines for collectives to follow? Correct. If a patient has a caregiver, currently the way it was obviously is not how it is now. There are more stringent guidelines, but what are those stringent guidelines? And is there any way to prove that? If we were to go to court, if a collective were to be taken to court and we were have a caregiver situation, would the collective be able to say, we didn't accept a caregiver unless they had a state card? But what if they don't have a state card?
If they don't have a state card, you have to prove that the caregiver is a real caregiver.
And how does the collective prove that?
Actually, I think that you could, if they represent themselves as a caregiver,
Mm-hmm.
and you have a recommendation
Mm-hmm.
of the patient,
Mm-hmm.
I believe that you could argue a mistake of fact if that patient turned out to be bogus. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I don't know.
You really want to go there. I mean, ideally, you wouldn't have to go there. You would, what?
I would, first of all, I don't think that it's a given that if they have the card, that proves that they qualify as caregiver. Because even though the state issues it, I'm not aware that the state actually questions the patient and determines what the nature of the relationship is. Okay. So I think either way, you'd have to show the nature of the relationship. If I was running an association for the caregiver members, I would require the patient to sign up at the same time, and I would make some inquiry, perhaps even develop a form in which they can check off, these are the things that I do for this person. So at least you can show that you made a reasonable effort. If the person lied to you, they lied to you. What are you going to do? Okay. But you can show you have a form that shows, they pay the rent for the person, they take them to the doctor, they, cook the meals for them, whatever it is, that there is a consistent personal relationship.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. part of it. Russ, is there any way we can get these mics turned on so I'm not the only one?
No, we don't.
You guys? Oh, great.
Testing.
We have power. Yes. Go ahead.
A couple months ago, a buddy of mine had local police knock on his door, and he had about 26 plants, including mothers and stuff that he had in his flower room. And he thought that he was within his legal limits of what he was doing, and he allowed the police to come in and inspect all his stuff. And they didn't do anything to him. They just kind of walked out. So my question is, if you're operating within the legal guidelines of Prop 215 and SB 420, and the police come knocking on your door, is it okay for you to show them their stuff or your stuff, or should you wait until they have a warrant to come inside the house and take a look?
I think that's a no-brainer. If you let them in and they happen to be wearing two different hats, they're DEA hat, because many times these local law enforcement officers are parts of these multi-jurisdictional task forces. So they could be wearing two hats at once.
Right.
They could be a city or state law enforcement official who also is a federal law enforcement official. Once again, items that are exculpatory under state law, such as collective agreements, are incriminating under federal law. So I don't think it makes much sense to give up your constitutional rights by giving consent and waiving your Fourth Amendment. You don't get a lot out of it. Now,
well, his idea was that, he was within the law and they could come in and he was being cooperative, basically.
I understand that, but I have to say, damn it, I'm an American. I have a right to privacy in my house. It is legal for me to have sex with... It's legal for me to have sex with my wife. That doesn't mean if a cop knocks on my door and says, can I come in and watch, I'm going to let him watch just because it's legal. Now, always be nice to people with guns, especially when they have badges and handcuffs. And I get this all the time. People consent. I'd say if everybody kept their mouth shut and didn't consent, half the people in jail would not be there. Right? I get it all the time. The people say, I thought if I said no, the cop would be suspicious. Guess what? The cop's at your door. He's already suspicious. You don't have a warrant, you ain't getting in my house. Cop comes to the door, walk out, close the door behind you, talk to him on the front porch.
don't open the door. Make him, slip a card under the door so that your lawyer can contact the cop and find out what it's all about.
That's right. They love you to open the door because they'll look in and they'll go, oh, I saw something on the table. Plain view.
Just say no.
Nancy Reagan had it right.
Mine's kind of a two-part question. I'm also from San Diego. One of the things that's happening to us down there is that they have sent out cease and desist letters saying that we have to shut down because they don't have a zoning code to put us in. And a lot of us have been operating for a while where all business licenses have been wrapped, and this is what we're getting. Is that legal for them to do? And the second part is they're also saying because we are collectives, collective is illegal, and that we are not able to operate as a nonprofit collective.
Okay, well, first of all, as far as the zoning, we're going to cover that in the afternoon session.
Okay.
Very quickly. Now, you're not going to like what I'm going to say. In my opinion, at least 95% of the dispensaries in California are not operating legally under state law. Just because you call it a collective does not make it a collective. If I have a slice of pizza and I call it a Big Mac, it doesn't make it a cheeseburger. A true collective, a true association of patients associating collectively is legal. But most dispensaries, that's not what's going on. Most dispensaries are somebody that owns it, who's selling cannabis to people who come in that have recommendations, and at the end of the day, taking the extra money, putting it in his pocket, and taking it home. That's not a collective. That's a business. But we'll get more into the zoning this afternoon.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
First, I want to say just thank you so much for being here. You guys are amazing. Thank you for all your intelligence. My question comes from the pure part of, let's say, in transportation. I'm from San Jose. I go through like 8 jurisdictions before I come to San Francisco just in a speeding ticket violation area. And as you know, like anywhere else, like Millbrae, San Mateo, Palo Alto, fines are going to be different. My question centers around, not really with pounds or anything like that, but let's say you have myself and I have another patient. The first question is, if I am transporting my legal 8 ounces for myself, by myself, great. What happens if I'm also transporting for another patient? So now I'm up to 16 ounces, but I have the 2 recommendations in the car. Where's the gray area there?
What's your relation with the other person?
It could be my wife, or it could be a patient that I would be taking care of.
Okay. If you are the caregiver for someone, and for your wife, you would probably logically qualify as caregiver, then you can transport both your own medicine and that for the caregiver.
Even though they're not in the car.
Your wife. If you're saying, well, I'm caregiver for my friend, the question's going to be, what do you do for him that makes you the caregiver?
I understand.
Well, we go to ball games together.
No, that's not going to make it.
Well, I've known him a long time and we smoke pot together.
That's not going to do it. Caregiver situation from now on, since the Mensch case, is going to be, very intense personal relationship. And just, yeah, he's my friend. That's not enough. Now, as far as can you transport for other people, let's say you and your friend are in a collective.
Yes.
This is actually an appeal right now that Xenia and I have worked on. We had a case in Redwood City, San Mateo County, where our client was pulled over in a DUI checkpoint. And he had 19 pounds and like $60,000 cash. And he was working with a collective in Southern California. We attempted to put on evidence to show they were a lawful collective, and this was bringing the medicine to the collective and bringing the money back to the growers. And the judge ruled that you're not allowed to transport for a collective. You can only transport as a caregiver. And if you're not a caregiver, you can't transport. It's a crazy decision. I think we're going to win the appeal. We just put in the final brief on it, and we'll see. But different jurisdictions, you have different rules. I mean, you have Santa Clara County is very conservative. San Mateo is very conservative. So if I was going to be transporting twice of the 8 ounces, I'd make sure that I had all the paperwork with me, and I'd also make sure I had a damn good reason of why I need to transport that much. Because again, if it's like, well, I was going up to see my friend and I thought I might need some medicine, so I brought along a pound. Ain't gonna fly.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Yeah, and I would just throw in there that it's really good to have some kind of just a statement from them, a letter or something saying that this is their material and that you're collectively transporting it.
Hi, my name is. Put it in the trunk and use a seal meal, folks. You want to cut that smell. Turkey bags, maybe they cut smell, but they also make noise. A seal meal, I can put the cop on the stand and go, okay, you smelled it through the seal meal? Here's 5 knapsacks. One of them has the evidence in it. Tell me which one is in it. They can't. Hermetically sealing, that's the way to go.
Hi, my name is Jeff Sarback. I'm a current student at Oaksterdam University. I'd like to thank you all for your courage for helping us protect ourselves from law enforcement. My question is in regards to documentation when you slightly exceed the low limitations. I grow clones that don't yield very much, and what I'm looking for is, bottom line, what documentation should I have, either be it a collective agreement or a modification of my doctor's note that will protect me from arrest. And I'd also like to note that I have an Alameda State card for the county.
Well, I think it depends. If you're growing for yourself, then the doctor's note is what you need. If you're growing as part of an association of patients, then the documentation of the association is what you need. But again, I think that when the Kelly decision comes down, it's going to throw those numbers out the window. But even then, you're still going to have to explain that what you have is an amount reasonably related to the medical needs of the patient or patients for which it's being cultivated.
Thank you very much.
So, Bill, just to follow up on that, now, do you think that when Kelly comes down, they're going to eliminate those as a ceiling, or do you think that they're going to take away the limited immunity for possession of amounts less than the 8 ounces?
Well, I think that they're either going to completely strike it out. If they keep it, they're going to keep it as a rebuttable presumption for people that have cards, essentially what the legislature intended. so that if you're within those limits, you've got a card. If the cop doesn't have a reason to believe you're otherwise breaking the law, like you've got your payo sheets and your for sale sign with you or something, they should walk away and leave you alone with your medicine.
This relates to plant counts and weight. When does a cutting or seedling, when is it considered a plant, especially by the DEA? And secondly, when you harvest, we know wet material weighs maybe 5 times as much. So what do they calculate?
Well, federally, a plant in the Ninth Circuit is defined as anything that has leaf, stem, and any root structure showing. So if you first cut it off, that's not a plant. As soon as it starts developing root structure, it's a plant for federal purposes.
I think the federal case law uses the phrase discernible root formation. So that's the very discernible beginnings of a root hair is sufficient to turn a clone into a plant for federal purposes. And I have also heard horror stories of DEA agents storing unrooted cuttings and taking them to their storage locker and letting them, develop a little bit of root formation so that they can claim that it is a plant.
Yeah, and they may not even need to do that because if they just leave it in the cube for a few days, you could end up with some roots just from that.
Yeah, as far as what the cops will say, they'll say anything. Chris and I worked on a case in Hayward where there were 178 little clones. And the cop said each one of those will put out a pound a month for 5 years.
I want one of
By the way, when Chris counted it, we got the judge to let him actually make the cop count it in court because we'd already counted it. What the cop swore was 178 clones was actually 80 little plants and 40 little cuttings. It's about 120, and that was it. So the cop got to the end, and he's reaching into the bag. He's pulling out like a dust bunny. That's a plant. A piece of leaf. That's a plant. It got to the point where people were coming from other courts to just sit there and watch this happening. We had a wonderful judge in that case.
He was pretty red looking, actually. As I recall, he was like a beet on the stand.
And then as far as the weights, does it count a fresh harvest? Are they going to let it dry, or are they going to count
that's why you use someone like Chris. Because Chris will explain that. It's going to lose 3/4 approximately in water weight. And then what's left, depending on the condition of the plant, how much of that is actually going to be bud. And the marvelous thing is the cops testify, well, I got taught this in cop school, and, I talked to some people and they told me this. Chris says, well, I'm using the DEA cannabis yield study done for the DEA and the government's own numbers. And it's wonderful to watch the cops on the stand try and explain how the government's own numbers are bogus.
But the answer is, under federal law, they don't necessarily have to dry it out before they weigh it. And there's a federal definition that says that marijuana is any mixture of a substance containing marijuana. So if there's water in the mixture, it is still considered marijuana under a very prohibitionist interpretation. I take the opposite interpretation, but you can't always go with the defense lawyer's interpretation. You have to consider how the prosecutors are likely to misinterpret the federal law.
And in California, we have 2 definitions of marijuana. One which is 11018, which says it's all parts of the plant except for the mature stalk. But we have another section, 11362.775D. You don't need to write that down. That says you only refer to the dry, mature processed female flowers. And so that's what we rely upon in California court.
Right, that's for the 8-ounce limit under SB 420 when it says you can only have 8 ounces. It says specifically it relates to bud. Not to shake, not to stems, bud only 8 ounces.
Not to water.
I'm in Colorado where it's pretty critical because we're at 2 ounces per patient.
Well, this afternoon we will have a very, very well respected Colorado attorney, Warren Edson, who's been at the very forefront of this, and you can ask him questions about Colorado this afternoon.
Thanks.
Hi. Delineating between the difference between a state card and an actual recommendation.
I'm sorry, could you get close to the mic, please?
Hi.
Yeah.
Delineating between the difference between a state card and an actual recommendation. We're running up against some problems from a doctor's standpoint because they'll get a recommendation and go and get a state card, but the state is only, I don't know why, and maybe you can tell me why, they only can issue cards for a 1-year period. So not only patients are doing this intentionally, but also unintentionally, and I think they changed it. Now you can only get a state card 3 months after you're issued a recommendation. Whereas a couple of years ago, I knew patients that they would wait 9 months and get a year card and think they would be legal for a year and 9 months, where the doctor would only be issuing the recommendation for a year period. How does that translate in the public and in court in terms of cards and whatnot?
I've seen the situation. Basically, someone gets a recommendation. The recommendation's good for a year. 6 months later, they go and get a state card. The state card says that's good for a year. That means that after 6 months, the recommendation will have expired, but the state card still says it's good. I haven't run into this in court, but I suspect you're not covered. What makes you a medical cannabis patient legal in California is the doctor's recommendation. That's an error in the state card system. But clearly, you should have your recommendation. Don't rely on that. Well, my recommendation expired, but I have a state card. I would not do that. Also, recommendations do not expire on their own. If that recommendation doesn't have a specific expiration date on it, then it's good for as long as you need the medicine. That's what the courts have said.
Okay.
But I certainly would not rely on my recommendation expired, but I have a state card. Go get your recommendation renewed.
I want to thank all of you for the whole program and all your help. I'm from Humboldt, and I live close to Arcata, and there are 4 that I know of storefront dispensaries that operate openly, freely, above board, out in the open. Okay, now, maybe you've answered this already, but hypothetically, if I have a recommendation and I belong to one of the dispensaries that buys all its cannabis, from producers. Well, one of them right now says, well, what you have to do now is get a Board of Equalization merchant's permit, agricultural products. And if I hypothetically get a Board of Equalization permit so I can pay state taxes, and I have my permit, my recommendation, forgive me, my medical recommendation, and I'm growing for myself outdoors, and in Humboldt, even the cops say it's 100 square feet outdoors and 99 plants. They admit this on, interviews, the sheriff. From what you told me, if I have a great year and I get 10 pounds out of my 100 square feet, I have a great year, and the cops show up, and I say, well, I've got my BOE thing here, and here I am signed up at the cooperative that operates freely, and I'm going to take my 7 pounds extra, and I'm going to get a wholesale price for this at the collective, and they're going to turn around and sell it for $38 an eighth, and I'm going to pay taxes to the state, and I think you're telling me that I'm still facing prosecution. Right or wrong?
Yes, I think that's illegal.
That they're all illegal.
I don't.
At these 4 dispensaries, one of them grows its own weed.
Excuse me.
Okay.
No. A lot of people got here driving on the freeway. The speed limit was 55. They all went over speed limit. Nobody got a ticket. It's still illegal. If the cop pulls you over, gives you a ticket, and you go to say, Judge, everybody's doing it openly. Everybody was openly doing it.
Well,
Judge says you got caught guilty. Now, people may disagree with me. My interpretation of the statute is if you're a member of the patient association and you're doing the cultivating, to be legal, you have to cultivate the association's cannabis. It belongs to the association. It never belonged to you. You can't walk in there and go, this is my cannabis, I'll sell it to you for $3,000 a pound. They can make an agreement with you where you cultivate it, you will be reimbursed for all your out-of-pocket expenses, all your costs, and you can receive payment for the job you're doing to help the dispensary. And maybe it's $20 an hour, $25 an hour, whatever your agreement is. But whatever that agreement is, you wind up with extra, you don't get extra money. If you and I belong to the same association, and we have that same agreement, and we grow, and we spend the same amount out of pocket, and we put in the same number of hours, but you have a green thumb and you get 10 pounds, and I have a black thumb and I get 1.5 pounds, we both get the same amount of money for it. Because it's not our cannabis that we're growing. It belongs to every member of that association, and we are just tending it for the association. Now, I've been told that we're out of time. But for those that still have questions, I'll certainly remain here and come up here. We can talk, and I'm sure the other members will too. Thank you much. Have a good lunch.
Thank you for downloading the NORML Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. We are produced by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C. Our executive producer is Alan St. Pierre. Our deputy director is Paul Armentano. Our webmaster is Brian Judy. And web production is provided by Red Aphid Interactive Media. As always, you can catch up on the latest information about marijuana at www.norml.org. And you can interact and download from our Audio Stash blog at stash.norml.org. For everyone here at NORML, I'm your host, Radical Russ Belville, hoping all your harvests are bountiful and your encounters with law enforcement are non-existent. Just a little reminder before we go that the podcast production will be just 2 days a week, this week and next week. You got today, and then you'll get a podcast tomorrow on Wednesday. Thursday and Friday, I'm back out on the road to Madison, Wisconsin. You get a podcast next week on Monday. Then Tuesday through Thursday, I'm on the road out to Orlando, Florida, and we'll bring you another podcast on Friday. Starting the week of October 12th, the Daily Audio Stash is back to daily, as I'll be back here in Portland, Oregon at NORML West Coast Media Headquarters, holding down the fort. And don't forget, NORML Show Live every Saturday night, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, where you'll get 2 more hours of live, interactive talk radio for, by, and about the cannabis community. Check us out at live.norml.org. Hope to meet some of you out on the road, and until next time, take care of each other, tokers.